second book talk on Barack Obama's A Promised Land. I am Dr. Felicia Durden, and I am so pleasant to be here and so good to see those of you who have joined us for our book talk. So if we remember from last time, we're now going to be picking up on our next part. We're in part 2, which is chapters 5 through 9, and we're going to do also part 3. So we're getting up to chapter 17 today. And this section in part 2 is called Yes, We Can, which we know was Obama's tagline. And so in this section, we see Obama talking about when he first began to run for the presidency. And this was his first presidential speech in 2008 in Las Vegas, Nevada. So let's look at young Obama. And this was his first time coming out as a candidate for the president of the United States.
Characters playing the same old Washington games over and over and over again, and somehow expecting a different result. That's a risk we cannot afford. That's a gamble we cannot take. We got to turn the page and write a new chapter in American history. So the American people understand that, but you know what we all.
Sorry, it messes up a little bit here. Here we go.
That's what they tell us. Come on, you undecideds, you know you've heard that argument. You know, they say, well, he hasn't been in Washington long enough. We need to season and stew him a little bit more. And boil all the hope out of him. So he sounds just like us. And then he will be ready. You know, the American people, they understand that's not a good bet. They understand the biggest gamble right now is to have the same old characters playing the same old Washington games over and over and over again, and somehow expecting a different result. That's a risk we cannot afford.
Okay, I'm just going to stop there. I just wanted to play a piece of it. So what we learned in this chapter was that Obama found that running for the president was very demanding and exhausting. So as we recalled, he was an idealist. His wife already had reservations about him running for this position. And now he's out on the campaign trail. And so he had to learn to rely on his team, but he was feeling fatigue and he was feeling exhaustion. And I thought he did a really good job of explaining that in those chapters, because I can just imagine going from an ideal to actually being out there doing it. So what he found was that race and politics was going to be huge for him. And so he ran on the platform of unity. He couldn't just focus on the Black man or the brown man. He knew that in order to win this race, he had to unify his campaign so that he could have a fighting chance. And one thing that he said was he was fighting the weight of the past. Can anyone tell me, what do you think he meant by fighting the weight of the past? He was fighting the weight of the past.
Well, I would just like to say it had been a very trying time. The past was very heavy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Was really looking into was going to be heavy also.
Yes. So he had all of the weight of the past on his shoulders as a first Black candidate. And you're right. Look at what he had ahead of him. A lot of weight. Mm-hmm.
I don't remember reading about that. I just got the book on Tuesday, so
Okay.
But I think the weight of the past also would include all of the civil rights years and the struggles there, Jim Crow days, all of that in the past that we're trying to get past.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Joanne. He had a huge weight to try to fight against to get to this place. So race and politics, I think we wouldn't expect anything else from having the first Black candidate, was a huge part. Now, how many of you all remember Jeremiah Wright? He talked about this in the book. And that was his pastor. And so there was a huge scandal, which, you know, was the news put this out there. It could have destroyed him. And he ended up having to break his ties with Jeremiah Wright. Joanne, go ahead.
This past week, I watched the program on the history of the Black churches, and they talked about Jeremiah Wright, and they showed his progression through and how he became what he was. And it almost left Barack Obama with no other choice if he was going to run for president.
So it was huge. It was his sermon that came out where he was racially charged.
Yes.
And that was his pastor, you know, someone that he had to connected with. And so it was hard for Obama, but he had to step away from that relationship in order to move forward in his presidency. And so what I like about when he writes this memoir, he said at one point, it's like when you're in something that is just so much more than you, sometimes you may look back on times in your life, it was like just pictures that you might look at, or just a movie in your head. And he said a lot of this time seemed like just newsreels and pictures, because he was just so deep in the thick of it. And so this was a huge part. But also in South Carolina, he said he made his hugest or biggest mistake. So he's running for the presidency. So South Carolina was an important primary. This was in the primaries. At the speech, people were chanting in the audience, "Race doesn't matter, race doesn't matter." But Obama wrote, "I didn't have the heart to correct those well-meaning chanters, to remind them that in the year 2008, with the Confederate flag and all it stood for still hanging in front of a state capitol just a few blocks away, race still mattered plenty, as much as they want to believe otherwise." What was he saying when he told them that, or when he wrote that? He didn't have the nerve to tell them that, excuse me. But what is he telling us?
I think he was wanting to let people know that what he was about to do was not by race. He really wanted people to believe that it was everybody's problem.
Right.
You might want to say.
It's all unity. Standing on that. So good. He couldn't come out at that time to say that. Anyone else have anything that they think about? What is he trying to say when he wrote that? Let me talk about what he said was his biggest mistake in the campaign. He said it was describing working class Republican voters as clinging to guns and religion. And he said in the book, that statement permanently damaged his relationship with the working class. And let's think about everything going on recently, clinging to guns and religion. What do you guys have to say about that?
Well, both of those items has been very strong in their position.
And why was that his biggest mistake, you think? In his own words.
I was trying to think of what did he say.
Well, I was thinking the same thing. In fact, I got my book trying to find it.
Oh, I don't have my page written down, but he wrote, clinging to guns and religion in a statement permanently damaged his relationship with the working class. It didn't sink him. he was still able to overcome. We're in that's in chapter 7. Let's see. But I think he's saying is that he antagonized a group by speaking up and saying what was in his heart. And Obama never really did that. And if you talk to some people, they'll say that sometimes he had to bite his tongue in order for the sake of unity. He really worked to unify. Therefore, many things and many times, we didn't hear him come speak out as much when he was running for the presidency. So he thinks that it was a very damaging statement and something that he actually has regrets for. And in the book, when you dig in, he has lots of things that he's contemplating and thinking about. He's a very reflective writer and thinker. And so race and politics was huge for Obama. He did, we know, go ahead and beat Hillary, but he offered her a cabinet position, which she finally picked. And then he chose Joe Biden to be his running mate because he found him to be a man of high character and someone whom he could work with. When you look at his cabinet choices later on, you see that experience was very important for him in the choices that he made. But one thing I wanted to say before I go on is that he was aware that voters imagined him as an ideal Obama. And he really wanted to be able to have them live up to those expectations when it came to being in office. So he was very careful in whom he chose and who he aligned himself with. And so it was Obama and Biden and McCain and Palin, Sarah Palin. That was John McCain's running mate was Sarah Palin, a woman who was very outspoken, and she represented the Republican Party that spoke up for what they believed in and had a strong connection. She definitely believed in gun rights, and think about he said the biggest mistake he made. And she was also proud of her religious background. So it was like a stark difference between Obama and Palin. Does anyone want to speak to that and how that may even play into current politics and just the new things that we've seen in the continued division between Republicans and Democrats, which we hope our current president will be able to bind or fix? Any thoughts? Joanne, what do you think?
I'm thinking that I'm not quite prepared for this talk today.
Oh, it's just, no, you're fine. It's just your thought, your ideas. What do you just as.
My thought about Obama and guns and religion.
Guns, not just guns and religion, but the status quo of, he said it was the biggest mistake he ever made. And look at the party that was running against him. These two campaigns, it was Obama and Biden and Sarah Palin and McCain. And just any thoughts. You don't, just what comes to mind. And if nothing, that's fine. Or Michelle, I forgot Michelle's here too.
I think back to that time, and for me, guns and religion, how did that go together? It was like a real division there.
Mm-hmm. And it still is.
Yes.
It still is.
And I also thought that the female on the other team,
Mm-hmm.
I I just didn't see how she was really fitting into the politics that we needed at that time.
But I see that her.
Oh, I'm sorry, Felicia. I had to mute, but I'm back because I'm not
that's okay.
driving now. But
That's
what I wanted to say, to me, I understand why he said that was his biggest mistake, because a lot of people that might have given him a chance were just looking for something to not give him a chance. And when he said that, it made a lot of people not even want to think about joining him because maybe of their gun rights, maybe because of religion. But what was kind of funny to me, or you had McCain being not so much the person pushing religion, pushing guns, but Sarah Palin was doing that. And then when Trump won, you had Trump so not much pushing religion, but maybe more guns, and Pence more religion.
Yeah. I do see that. I was thinking the same thing, that parallel to Obama's last, or not last, but this ticket and our former president and vice president. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. So then Obama, again, I said he was talking about living up to the expectations of this office. And so here's one of his quotes. He says, all of us, we should do everything we can to make sure this country lives up to our children's expectations. So he really believed in the importance of having a high moral character and helping to make the country live up to those high expectations. This we see throughout his candidacy. He won. And that's when we get to the Renegade, which is chapters 10 through 13, part 3. This is where we get to see him when he is inaugurated and when he picks his first cabinet members. So again, it's a memoir, and he's telling us about his experience. So here is Obama walking the walk when he's won the presidency, his ticket won, and this is one of my favorite things to look at.
They can relate to this historically, more so probably than many other presidential inaugurations. And there is President Obama. The crowd is going wild. They're thrilled that he stepped out of the car.
Let's just watch and listen to the excitement of this crowd. Ron Walters, you actually had a very interesting point about where the Obamas got out of the car. Not sure if it is significant, but it's really interesting, and it could be significant.
I think it could be. It's almost ironic that he got out in front of the only African-American owned building on Pennsylvania Avenue, which is the National Council of Negro Women. And Dr. Dorothy Height, who is an iconic figure in the civil rights movement, for a long time was head of that organization. And he got out at that very point.
Okay, so Obama has won. In chapter 10, he talks about how he visited the White House several times as a senator, but now he would be visiting the Oval Office and taking over from the Bushes to be the president of the United States. And in the Renegade chapter, he talks about the cabinet that he picks, but also about the economic and foreign policies that he had to deal with in his presidency. He had a global financial crisis and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that would be on his plate. And so this chapter is just filled with the key people that he picked to run his campaign, who his cabinet choices are. We currently have seen that with President Biden. And it's so important, the people that you pick to be around you. And I think that that shows, again, he wanted people with experience, and he wanted people that surrounded him that he knew could do the job well. Obama was very intentional, and you can see that when reading about how he picked these people. But we also know he loved his wife very much, and her role was important for him. And she was overwhelmed, and she was criticized in the beginning, if you can recall, when they first went into the Oval Office, that some people did not like her. And so he speaks of the duty that she had and this new role that she had to take on. On page 221, in the last paragraph, he says, over the course of the campaign, I'd watched Michelle adapt to our new circumstances with unerring grace, charming voters, nailing interviews, perfecting a style that showed her to be both chic and accessible. It was less a transformation than an amplification, her essential Michelle-ness varnished to a high shine. But for all her growing comfort with being in the public eye, behind the scenes, Michelle was desperate to carve out some zone of normalcy for our family, a place beyond the distorting reach of politics and fame. And we only have women here today. So as a woman, what do you imagine Michelle was thinking at this time? Remember, she was not crazy about her husband running for the presidency. She did not want that. But there's in one of those chapters, I think is in 7, when she thought he was going to win, she kissed him on the cheek and said, "You're going to win." Turned off the light and went to bed. So how do you think Michelle felt?
I think she was wanting this for Barack because she knew he could do it, but she was also aware that it was going to come with a cost
Yes.
to him, to her family, to the children.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she finally accepted that this was the will of God and she had a part to play to make him, because she was his right hand, you know, behind every great man is an even greater woman. So she knew that was what she was going to have to do, and she had to find a way to do it. And even though she wasn't for it, once it was a fate, she did what she needed to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it wasn't easy for her. On page 222 in the second paragraph, he says, it's not as if I didn't share Michelle's stress. Molly and especially Sasha were so young in 2008. All pigtails and braids, missing teeth and round cheeks. How would the White House shape their childhoods? Would it isolate them, make them moody or entitled? At night, I would listen intently as Michelle gave me the latest intel she'd gathered, then offer my thoughts on this or that issue that was nagging her, providing her with assurance that a sullen remark or small piece of mischief from either of the girls didn't indicate the early effects of their sudden topsy-turvy world. So then even as a mother, she had concerns that this was going to make the girls act differently and maybe turn their lives around. So it was a big role. Go ahead, Joanne.
When I read Michelle's book, she talked about how she worked hard for the girls to have a normal life while they were in the White House. So it was a very stressful time for her in more ways than just becoming the president's wife, you know. And it was to keep those young girls level.
Yes.
And the world around them.
Yes, yes. Anyone else have anything to say on that before we move on from Michelle? What I like is that he does a good job. He knew his wife, and I really like reading when he writes about her, just his memories and just this distinct respect you see that he has for his wife.
His concern for her well-being.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Yeah. So his team, he always praised his team, and he picked some heavy hitters in there. But he also, and we talked about this in our first discussion, that Obama sometimes takes things on to himself. I see him as a man who's very reflective, has a very high expectation. And as a leader, he says that their failures resulted in his failure to set them in a position to succeed. So he saw when his team failed, it wasn't a failure just on them, but a failure on he himself. What do you guys think of that? What does that tell us about his character?
It tells me he is not the type of person to put someone out front and then if it doesn't go well, step back and say, well, I had nothing to do with that. He took responsibility, maybe times when he shouldn't have, but that was just the kind of, he felt as a leader that he was responsible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that shows a lot of character because you have a lot of leaders who, it wasn't me. They didn't do it right. I think it just shows us the type of man that he is.
You know, another place where I saw that was, this was before he was elected, and it was the first time Michelle had spoke at one of the rallies, and she kind of got hung up on some of what she said, and he felt responsible because he said they had not given her, you know, like before he would go on stage, they would talk to him, make sure he had everything in the right perspective. And they had elected to do that for Michelle. And it was almost like.
Right. The prepping of her, the prepping of her.
And I thought then that that showed good leadership, showed concern for his wife. I just really respected him a lot for doing that.
Yes.
Saying that.
Yes. Wonderful. Wonderful.
I think he had a very good, the best character that a man could have, taken on the responsibility of the political arena and his family.
Yes.
He did a very good job of
Yes, he did. And I like that political arena and his family, not just one. He was able to do both with success. That's what a successful person is able to do.
Amen.
That's why he's total success.
That was one of the things I admired about the two of them. When you would see them together with the kids and all, you saw a family, not just the president of the United States. Like,
that's a good point.
Yeah.
And I can see that from his book. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I thought that was very good that they were able to present that to the world and present his leadership.
Yes. Yes.
And so.
And that's not easy.
No, that's not easy.
You can't fake that. That's got to be real. Very good.
And they were very, very well-mannered young ladies. And that doesn't come easy when you're in a situation like they were, because they had to be under stress most of the time.
Absolutely. I then wanted to talk about, he in the book talked about reporting the truth. And I think about this whole thing with fake news now, and Mitch McConnell was really not one of his greatest allies. And so Obama wrote about how he just really had to expose the fact that there needed to be a balance of the press's responsibility to report the truth. That he saw that he had grievances about this, that not always the truth was shared. And we know that our former president felt that way. Just taking it from the point of view, you know, as him as a leader, first African-American leader, and reporting the truth and what we know about the news and the angles. Just, what do you guys think he was going through with that, and why?
He was probably having to study a lot to find out those individuals that and how he would handle it. And I think we could really see that in him as he went about really taking or being very humble about what he was trying to do.
Yes, yes, he was. And therefore, he wanted to be put in the best light and the truth to be told about what he was trying to do. Anyone else? That was huge for him. And he wanted to live up to those campaign promises. And that sometimes is a struggle because he's a man of high integrity, we know. And so he talked about struggling in the face of those political realities that maybe some things that he promised might not come to pass right away, because with everything, there's a process and it takes time. And so I talked about it before that he had a lot of weight on his shoulders, Obama. And I feel like this book is him refreshing his soul on that. Go ahead, Michelle. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine, Dr. Durden. I think, like you said, he wanted the truth to be told. And of course, there were certain news outlets that would look for anything they could to try to turn it on him to say, well, he said this, but he did that, when it wasn't true. And I think for him, it was probably really hard because there was things he wanted to do for the American people, but because of there not being a way to get the other side to really unite and give the people what he had promised, it made it hard. And I think that really, far as him, it made him feel bad because he couldn't live up to some of the promises that he had wanted to do.
Good. Yes, he couldn't, but he wanted to. And that was that internal conflict that he had. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, and I haven't read this part of the book, but I would think that he had to be very careful so that the public didn't think that he was going for one side or another, being a biracial person and the first to be the president. You know, I think it was a very, very stressful
absolutely
time for him to be able to come through as well as he did.
Absolutely. Good point. It was not easy. Not easy. So that is actually where it ends. It's sort of slow, this beginning part, you know, he's just getting into the presidency. I really found these two sections to just get us to see what he was thinking, what he was going through, picking his cabinet, winning this election, realizing that running for the president was an exhausting task, and winning, he actually won, but wanting to be that man of integrity who won this in a honest way. I saw that in his words. He wanted to be honest in everything that he was doing. He wanted to take care of his wife and children. He wanted to make sure that he represented Blacks in an appropriate way, but he didn't want to seem that he was just about race. But race came up right away in his campaign with Jeremiah Wright. But we're going to continue to see in the next meeting, which will be March 24th, when we're going to go into the good fight and the world as it is. And then we'll round it out on April the 28th with chapters 22 through 27 in the barrel and on the high wire. And remember, this is just part one. This memoir is just part one, this huge book. He has other volumes to come out because this doesn't take us through everything, because he writes a lot and he knows what he's saying. How are you guys enjoying reading the book? Those of you that have got your copy. I think it's pretty good reading and pretty easy. What do you guys think?
I'm enjoying it. I like his writing style. He's very loquacious, but I like the fact that he goes into the discussions he does when he's presenting things to us. And sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, he used that word there.
The beautiful author. Oh, he's such a good writer.
And it's a book that's holding my attention.
That's wonderful. Me too. Me too.
And I have a question. I have a couple friends that I know are reading this book, and I was wondering if I could invite them. I don't know if they would be interested or not, but I thought maybe I could invite them to join us.
I would love that. One of my friends was an able to make it today. She had to do something with her children, but absolutely, because it's such a rich book.
Yes, it is. It
It's
is.
wonderful, wonderful.
I like his writing. It's very
Mhm.
easy to read.
It is.
Yeah.
A lot of reading, but it's
Uh-huh.
still easy to read.
It
Yeah.
is. It's like reading just a friend's diary, a journal. I feel like, okay, this is what
Mhm.
happened. Oh, okay. And I can see it. I can envision it. It's very, very nice writing. Very good. Very good. Okay. Well, that is it for this week's discussion, this month's discussion, I should say. So we'll be back 4 to 5 on Wednesday next time, March 24th. And then we'll go through 14 through 21.
But thank you for guiding us through this.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm enjoying it so, so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.